Hello, Outlaws, and welcome to our Season 2 recap episode. It's episode 20 of Season 2. Who can believe it? And we thought we'd just do an episode to talk through some of the key moments from Season 2, what we learned from all of our extraordinary guests, and maybe some of the themes and stuff that have come out.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. It's such a nice thing to do. We started recording, I remember actually we started recording our first episode for Season 2 on Halloween with Henry.
Henry was such a great guy, right?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking to Henry.
And he was such a great person to speak to first off because Outlaws went international, which was pretty cool. And he was such a lovely person to talk to. And I think Henry's pretty young. I think maybe early 30s. And it was just so interesting to talk to him and see what is possible. So he is still a lawyer. He's still working as a lawyer. And his tag is that corporate lawyer, isn't it? And I follow him on Instagram. It's such great content. It's really helpful content. And but he also practices as a lawyer part-time. So he's been able to sort of adjust the law to his liking, really, hasn't he?
Yeah, and that's what I loved about him and also Sam from Joseph is that both of them have got jobs that no one even knew existed 10 years ago. And I just find that encouraging on all sorts of levels because I think it means that we can reimagine work in a way that we maybe don't even know about. And there's so much. You and I spoke at a conference the other week and someone asked a question about AI and how that was going to affect the legal industry. And I think there's a lot of angst out there about it. Like, how is this going to affect not just jobs for lawyers, but all sorts of jobs, it's sort of, there was the Industrial Revolution. This is like the AI revolution. What is this going to look like? But I think that it's encouraging to go, well, there's a job we didn't even think was going to be a thing.
That's right. There's two examples we've had this, I was about to say this semester, this season. Which is showing people how they're still in law, really, because Joseph is an AI product and an app creation product as well for use in the law. And so it is just a different way of imagining a legal career. I really loved that too. It was always so nice to talk to Sam as well, since we had worked together. And we had, I did a bit of research, Shayla, because I am so not a spreadsheet kind of gal. But I did a bit of research and looked at the stats of this semester. God, here I go again, of this season. Do you want to hazard a guess? You might already know, actually. What was our top-rated episode?
I don't know because I haven't looked for a while, but I'm going to say Emily. Was she the highest?
Second highest. Yeah, Dr. Emily Amos, she was fantastic. And I think her story was so powerful. Her quote, and we put this on the website as the sort of the pull quote from her entire episode. And I think it really sums up what she was saying, is that altruism in the absence of self-awareness is self-sacrifice.
Just such a great quote, isn't it? And she gave us one awesome other one too that I really liked. And she said that she realized that there was zero investment in the vessel that held all of the education.
Yes.
And I thought that was so important because we go, I've invested all of this money and time and energy and I'm now this sort of highly trained person in whatever field you happen to be. And so she was basically saying, if the boat's leaking, then you're stuffed anyway.
Right. If you can't invest in the expertise if you are going to neglect the vessel that is carrying that expertise around. Yeah. She
Which
was
I
so
thought
great.
She was so great. So great. Loved that episode. Yeah.
Me too. I also.
So what was the first one?
Oh, sorry. Distracted. The top episode was Beth Ann Wynne on how to make decisions. Yeah.
Decisions. And it's always a good topic, right? Because people want to know how to make decisions.
Correct. And as two Librans running this podcast, Librans are known for being indecisive, but I wrote a few things down because I found Bethan's episode to be so powerful. And a lot of people have talked to me about this episode and said how much they enjoyed it as well. And not that I get stopped in the street, Shayla, but...
Well, come on, you do, Kate.
But if someone I know is listening, they'll often say how good they found it. I think for me, the most powerful takeaway of the whole season was in Beth Ann's episode. I'm a big believer in the power of intuition, and I do tend
Yeah.
to make decisions based on instinct. And Beth Ann said that intuition is not mystical, it is pattern recognition built through experience,
Right.
which is,
Yeah.
yes,
Bang.
right? So because there is a sort of a tendency, I think, to go, oh, intuition, well, I can't really rely on
Yeah.
that because, oh, it's a bit woo-woo or it's a bit just, what's it
Mhm.
really about? But actually, it is a pattern recognition that we've built up over time. So when we get that kind of somatic response, and I think this is something that
Yeah.
Joe Bowles talked about too, the somatic response, that physical response, when we know something just sits right or feels right, that actually it isn't a mystical spirit telling
Mm.
us that that's what we need to be doing. It's actually just our own bodies recognizing what our brain has recognized many
Mm.
times before. And it's almost like a shortcut to knowing that that probably is the right next step.
Describing intuition as some kind of mystical thing does it a bit of a disservice, right?
Right,
Because actually
right.
people go, "Oh, for goodness sake," if you can't explain it properly. Do you get
Mm.
newsletters from Martha Beck?
I have done in the past, actually. I'm thinking I haven't
Yeah.
got them recently, although
She
I do
sent
like Martha Beck's work.
Yeah, she sent one out yesterday on a very kind of similar theme, like very much
Mm,
separating that idea of the cognitive process that you go through when you go through decision making, and then the other things, none of which were cognitive and very much were around those somatic and yeah, in inverted commas, intuition responses that you have in your body.
mm,
So that's interesting. I didn't
mm.
actually know that Beth Ann Wynn's episode was the
Yeah,
one that
yeah.
has
It
been
was
most downloaded. So
most downloaded, but Dr. Emily Amos's was in a, not far
second.
behind.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Um, and then I think the third one, and I didn't didn't write this down. Such a great researcher and statistician. Uh, I think it was Michael Kingsbury's episode.
Oh, yes, I think you're
That
right.
was a
Yeah.
really interesting one because I think what Ulu are doing is so incredible.
Mm.
And so I think there was a lot of interest from people just to hear more about Ulu. So Michael is a former lawyer. I got to know Michael because he was involved in the legal app creation unit because the firm he was working for supported the app creation unit I ran at my last university. And but then he took this incredible risk to
Mm.
set up something that had not been done before, which is to turn seaweed into plastic and
Mm.
they've just had some really remarkable funding that they've secured. And so the plan is to scale that technology to make a real difference in the world. It's a pretty extraordinary company. And it's a great story of Michael's just to hear about his process and how he made
Mm.
those decisions. But he made those decisions when we talked with him about his younger life, what he was interested in at school, he's always been
Yeah.
he's had quite a broad interest and the
Mm.
science and the engineering and the business, and he's enjoyed that throughout his time at school and in education more generally. And then it's quite an interesting thing to see it all kind of come together in Ulu. When you look at
Yeah.
Ulu, it seems like quite a random thing for an M&A lawyer to get involved in turning seaweed into plastic. But actually, when you dig back through his history, it's actually quite um,
Yeah.
not obvious step because I don't think there's anything obvious about what he did, but and that he took a risk and, gosh, long may it continue.
Mm.
That's an extraordinary company and what they're
Well,
doing is amazing.
it goes back to that theme that keeps coming up, doesn't it, about sort of following what it is rather than what it is that you think you should be doing. Instead, just sort of going, "Oh, I really like that. I'm just, yeah, follow
Mm.
that breadcrumb down that trail."
Yeah, right. But what's so interesting about Michael is that he was on track. He was on this really
Mm.
not
Mm.
obvious track, but a well-worn path to what we would
Yeah.
consider to be success, and yet he chose to step off it and do
Yeah.
something so different. But again, then I mean, we talked to Rob Masala too, my old law school
Mm.
contemporary, and it was so great to hear from him. I loved his story. As I said, I did know that story, and I just thought it was so great what he did. But he was always like that at uni. And I just I loved him
Yeah.
saying about when he was saying about, lecturers would say, "Hey, if you're interested in this topic, it's not examinable, but you could go ahead and read this." And he was like, "Why would someone do that?"
Extracurricular, I don't think
Yeah,
so.
but if it was something about movies or TV or whatever it was, yes, he would have been thrilled to have done it. And I think that's
Yeah.
when he said he realized, but he did follow a pretty outrageous. It looks from the outside to be an outrageous decision, a huge risk, and he
Mm.
certainly did. Like when he was saying about like buying a car for $1,000 that drove from New York to LA, conked out the minute he got there, and he said he
Yeah.
had some pretty lean times, but he knew that was the business he wanted to be in, and he's made it
Yeah,
work.
he was very, very focused on where he was
Yeah.
going. There were some parallels with Emily Chokos-Patil's story as well,
Mm,
where she also was in a career that everyone from the outside would look at as success, but she
right.
felt this very strong need to be writing, and so she left that,
Mm,
again, in inverted commas, sort of highly successful career and
yeah.
just pushed on regardless
Right.
of, what else was going on. She rode in her car when she was waiting for her kids to come out. Like,
Yeah.
all of these things,
Right.
they're
Yeah.
they're big risks that people
Yep.
take, but it seems like when you're very invested in, or not invested, but when you really feel, perhaps going back to
Mm,
that intuition, or the way in which, Beth Ann framed it was that
mm,
the learning that our body has done over a period of time, it's like, well, no,
mm,
I know how I feel when I make this decision, and so
mm.
you push through it, and you just
Yeah.
keep doing whatever you need to do, which is what Rob did, which is what Emily did,
Right. Right.
which is what
And to
so many
their
of our guests did.
Right, and yes, to their utmost sort of credit, yes, but also to the like. I'm sure there's a better expression than the proof is in the pudding, but that's the one that's popping up for
Mm,
me now.
yeah.
Maybe because I actually really feel like I'd like some pudding. I don't know. In any event, the proof is in the pudding. Emily has written an incredibly successful novel, which was the winner
Mm,
of the Premier's Emerging Writer Prize, if I'm correct.
yes.
And it is a
Mm,
fantastic book. I'm not much of a fiction reader, actually. I tend to read
mm,
nonfiction, but I loved Martia. It was just such a compelling story.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and look, my personal favourites often are the Outlaw Escapes episode, because I just love it
Mm,
when people just go, "Okay, off I go." And
mm,
so we spoke to Kate Cranny,
mhm.
and she told us the story of how she rode around, basically, wasn't it? Her
Yeah.
and her partner rode
Mm,
around so many countries in
mm,
South America and then Europe, I think it was. I
yeah,
might have missed out some of
yeah.
those things.
I
But,
just always think, how did they ride in Switzerland? That's hardcore. There's a few
exactly,
hills in Switzerland. Yeah,
without an
that's not a
electric
flat
bike.
surface. No.
Yeah. Um, and then Kelly Irving, who did a similar thing, really redesigned the business that she has.
Yep,
So she was working hardly any
yep,
hours, and then moved her whole family. Well, they also travelled rather than sort of
yeah,
move to one place. They travelled around. So I just always love hearing those episodes, because I'm inspired by people's bravery to do things like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, they did it. They sort of took time out, and it's not necessarily easy. And there's always sort of some risks involved with that kind of story, but they made the plan and they just leapt. And I think that is
Mm.
it's very inspiring to hear those stories, because it makes it clear that it is actually possible.
Yeah.
Um, you could just rearrange things differently. You don't even have to not work. I mean, we spoke to Melissa High in first season,
Mm. Yep.
but she stayed practicing as a lawyer. She just did it
Yeah.
remotely from France. Kate and
Mm.
Kelly took actually time out from their businesses. Well, Kelly has a business. Kate was working. She's a lawyer turned science educator from memory,
Yeah. Yeah.
working in the science area. But yeah, they still took some time out, and yeah, it's possible, right? You tend to think,
Yeah.
no, it couldn't be done, but it can be done, and it can be done in all sorts of different ways. Um, I also loved um, our episode with Carly Shriver. So Dr. Carly
Yeah.
Shriver, lawyer turned psychologist, but we had such an interesting conversation with her, didn't we, about the big research project that she's involved
We
in.
did.
It's a
Yeah.
national research project, and her findings about judicial well-being particularly, but also too about that sort of moral injury, the structural issues that can
Yeah.
contribute to um, the difficulties
Mm.
of people serving in those really important roles. So I really enjoyed talking to her. I enjoyed her story, her personal story about
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I'm always more interested in the people and why they're doing what they're doing rather than the legal aspect
Mm.
of what was going on, because she was in a law firm, I think, and then she worked as a judge's associate in the Supreme Court of Victoria, I think. I hope I've got that right.
Mm.
But she took a role, and then she studied psychology part-time, and then I think
Mm.
she completed
Yeah.
her PhD a few years ago. But she's working in private practice as a psychologist to assist
Mm.
members of the judiciary or the legal profession more generally, but then turning that expertise into uh, getting involved in that research project. That is, the findings will
Yeah.
be coming out this year, I think, and will be, I think, hopefully lead to some structural change as well. But just that
Mm.
awareness of what the damage that can be done by the system itself, and that
Yeah.
concept of moral injury, which you've picked up on a number of times, haven't you?
I
Um,
have. Yeah. Well,
mm,
yeah, I think it was really useful talking to her about that, and then I've just really, yeah, I guess been talking to people more broadly about that. So
mm.
it just seems to be a topic that really resonates with a lot of people. So
The power is in naming it and calling it moral injury. I feel like now that there is that's probably existed for a while, but I hadn't really
yeah.
thought of it in those terms. And I think there's a real power in having a phrase that
Yeah.
to hang the phrase to hang the kind of concerns on almost.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean,
mm,
I say system burnout because
right.
I don't know, that to me, I don't know, it's kind of sounds more easily understandable almost
Mm,
immediately. Um,
mm,
but yeah, certainly that's absolutely what it
mm.
moral injury. So, and I think the more I think about that, that's just applicable across so many professions. I
Yes.
think of teachers, for example, who, are so challenged within the education system as it is.
Right.
There's just so many people who are, I think, probably battling that on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, that was a really great episode. And then we had Rabia Sadiq, who gave us
Hmm.
her very inspiring story of courage,
Yep.
of what happened to her when she was in the Middle East as, a
I think she
army
was an
lawyer.
army
Yeah,
lawyer caught up in
yeah,
a pretty dramatic hostage situation. And then I think
absolutely.
really what she has talked about ever since is that, and I guess, look, it is kind of structural too, isn't it? That she was silenced, that her role
Mm,
in the hostage situation was minimized. And then she
mm,
took on the British Army. To have
yeah,
really had to have her contribution recognized. And so it's that sort of speaking out. That's really what she is sort of saying, isn't it? That um, sort of having the courage to speak out about the injustice that she
yeah,
experienced as a result of
mm, yeah,
that
yeah,
system closing ranks, I suspect, I
mm.
guess.
You mentioned a little bit before about Joe Bowles,
Yep.
who's turned from international finance
Yes.
to a somatic therapist, which is
Mm,
just it feels like such a significant shift, doesn't it?
mm, mm. And think what was so powerful from Joe's story too was it was incremental. It was,
Mm,
she was sort of adjusting bit by bit. She was trying
yeah,
different things. She got to the point where sort of burnout hit and she thought, well, no, this isn't, I need some time out. And she just
mm,
experimented with different things until she found the right fit.
yeah,
She was a great person to talk to. I also really love talking to Lois K. Smith as
yeah,
well,
yeah. Mm.
talking about career change and oot and a boot. Getting the oot and a boot.
Yeah,
You've got to just get oot
yeah.
and a boot.
And being ready for change and how you decide you're
Mm,
ready for change and,
yeah,
maybe sort of over managing that whole thing and so that was
right.
really great, I think, to have that discussion. What did she
Yeah.
called it? Procrastinating, where it's like, "Oh, I don't know
Oh,
enough about that, so I should go and do a bit more learning about that," and then people just learn
yeah,
about stuff for ages but never actually make
right.
the shift. So I really liked that idea.
Yes, better do another degree or another course before yeah, procrastinating learning. That's such a classic outcome of this season too,
Yeah.
I think. But it sort of feeds back into what Beth Ann's talked about as well. And I really liked the discussion we had with her, how we get caught up with making these really perfect decisions, but actually there's no such thing as a perfect decision.
No.
There's only we don't have to keep making them perfect. We just have to make them good. And
Yeah, well, I think I heard it on someone else's podcast a long time ago, which is don't worry about making good decision, just focus on making the decision good.
oh, yes,
Yeah.
that's a
So
really
like
good one.
just make the decision. Like basically there are no real bad decisions, you know. You just make the decision, and then instead of investing all this energy and time into pontificating about, you know, should I go this way or should I go that way, just do it. And then you spend all of that energy that you then have spare to
Yes.
just, you know, make that decision work.
Right. It occurs to me, just segue, pontificate would be a great Instagram handle for myself. But that's
Okay,
by
see
the
if it's
by,
available.
Shayla. Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I better. I was like, this isn't live, so I've got time to check it before someone else called Kate listening to this podcast goes, she's right. That is a good Instagram handle. I wrote this down, and then my writing is so bad, and I squeezed it into the bottom. I'm trying to realize what it was I wrote, but it was from Beth Ann's episode. Stop trying to make perfect decisions, just make good decisions. Most meaningful choices, that is just terrible writing. Most meaningful choices are not final verdicts, but starting points.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it takes the pressure off. But I remember too in Beth Ann's episode where she said people sometimes have more trouble with the smaller decisions than the bigger ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's certainly true of me. I can overthink I'm going out with some friends. We're going to catch up. Where should we go for dinner? I'm like, this is overwhelming. But actually,
Yeah.
sometimes when it's something like, I'm going to leave this tenured position, I just
Yeah,
knew it.
you can
And
just
that's
do
a
it.
big
Yeah.
decision.
Sam from Joseph made a point about that. He talked about how he needed to unlearn a lot of the things that he'd learned in his previous legal career because, you know, taking risks in business is quite important. And, you know, I think I was having this discussion with someone the other day that sometimes the more you know, the worse it is, right? Actually, you know, if you sit in this lovely world of sort of naivety in some ways, you know, you can't imagine all of the things that might go wrong or whatever. Just, you know, you bowl in and then you solve the problems as and when they come up. And I feel like maybe that's a nicer way of sitting in life rather than just kind of managing everything and overthinking every single decision and pontificating to the nth degree.
Pontificating.
It's a verb.
I think, to pontificate. But I'd like to spell it with capital K. Pontificate. That's what I'm gonna.
Oh no!
There's a business idea there. Somehow
look it up. Seriously, that's actually a really good one.
And we had an Outlaws After Dark episode, which still should be called Side Hustlers, if you ask me. And our listener Chris, thank you, Chris, who also felt I was robbed in that decision. That was Shayla's decision, not mine. Anyway, I'm over it, obviously. We interviewed Sandrine. Yes, obviously. No tension there between Shayla and myself about that. No.
There's no tension from my side, I can tell you.
Correct, right. And look, I'll be honest, there's really no tension from mine either. But sometimes I feel the listeners want a bit of beef, you know?
Oh, right.
A little bit of a reality show before, maybe Shayla and Kate. There's been a falling out. Maybe we could
pontificate between Shayla and Kate.
Ooh. Do you know, I always want to call you Shayla la la.
Do you know what? We should actually start a show that's called Pontificate, where we get people in to talk about decisions that they're trying to make, and we pontificate with them, and then we make them make a decision at the end. That'd be great.
Yes.
I'd love
that. That'd be great, like a chat show.
Yeah.
We'll still need some workshop on that, but we've got a break in between seasons where we can really sort of thrash that out a bit. Yeah. But back to Sandrine. Sandrine invented a game. And she's working as a lawyer too. She stayed working as a lawyer, but that for her was a creative outlet. She saw a gap in the market actually because it was based on her own experience or own concerns around her own children and created this game. So again, just
Followed her
joyful.
interests.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Mm.
creativity, and she just followed that interest. She didn't sort of throw away her legal career and go, "I'm just gonna become a game designer." Although even if she did, good for her, but
Yeah.
it was just something that existed alongside her career, which is just very cool. And then also too, of course, now we're gonna talk about the Outlawry books that we've talked about, but of
Mm.
course, our first Outlawry choice was Imposter Syndrome, and Shayla scored
The
the
author.
author. Like, we got the author on the podcast, and that was so
Yeah.
great to talk to Alison Shamia, who wrote Imposter
Mm.
Syndrome. She came on the podcast, and we got her in the Outlawry episode, and then we also had a separate episode with her just talking through Imposter Syndrome and what it
Mm.
is and
Yeah.
how it manifests, and yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah,
And we had 2 other books in the Outlawry. So we
we
had
did.
The 5
5,
Types of Wealth
correct. The
by
Bro
Shayla
Code,
Bloom, the Bro Code that you
correct.
call it. And then
Yes.
we had Mattering, Jennifer Brahini Wallace.
I
Look, I always enjoy Outlawry. I think it's good to just read different books and then chat about them and see how people
mm,
experience them. And, we quite often both have conversations from people who go, "Oh, I've read that book after you talked about it and I've got this from it or I've got that from it." So
mm.
they're always good. And I think, we got, even though you didn't particularly like the 5 Types of Wealth, and I think, to be
Oh,
honest,
well,
both of them, I feel as though both of them, we might have had this undercurrent of they felt a bit like it was telling us how to suck eggs. But I think that's
mm,
because you and I talk about this stuff so much. And I just don't think
yes.
that other people will experience them in the same way.
That's such a funny expression, though, to me, isn't it? Suck eggs. Like, I've never sucked an egg, I'll be honest with you. I
Yeah.
don't think I'd need to be taught how to do it. But to me, that is a that is a truly bizarre
Do you
expression.
think, in fact, we're recording this over the Easter weekend. Did you ever do that
Oh,
thing at primary
topical.
school? Yes. Did you ever do that thing at primary school where, like, you put a little
Suck
hole
on a
in the top of the
chocolate
egg?
East. Yeah, totally.
No. No, an actual real egg, yeah, and, like, suck out the inside of an actual
Oh,
real egg and paint the egg? No?
no,
Do you
ew.
think
But
that's where the saying comes from?
do you know what? I have no idea. Um,
I'm gonna look it up
and
because
isn't the phrase teaching your grandmother how to suck eggs?
I
Isn't
don't
it?
know, I've never heard that expansion of it.
Well, that's, I think, where I've heard it. In
Okay,
any event,
so it
we're getting off
says
track.
yeah, it originates in the 1700s. People, especially elderly people with poor teeth, would eat raw eggs by piercing the shell and sucking out the contents. Therefore, teaching your grandmother was teaching someone who already had that particular skill. So you're correct. Comes with your grandmother, and that's where it comes from. There you go. You learned it here first on the Outlaws podcast.
In any event, it's a weird expression. In any event, though, but it does mean just being obvious, right?
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
and
Yeah.
Mattering was it was a pretty good read, and I
Mm,
liked a lot of what she said. But I do think, yeah, you're right. We did say this. It could be subtitled Mattering. Spoiler alert, mattering matters. It
yeah, yeah,
matters to
yeah.
matter. And so, it was, there was more to it than that. I actually quite enjoyed it as a book. And I didn't dislike The 5 Types of Wealth.
Mm.
I just didn't like the style of it.
The
I think I
tone.
was miffed by the tone and the
Mm,
sort of
yeah.
the heavy, the bro, yeah, I called it the bro code for a reason. But you know what? He's the bro, right? Well, he's the man. So he's got his
Mm,
own perspective on things. And that's
mm,
absolutely legitimate. But everything he said was actually, again, spot on.
mm.
You
Yeah,
won't lose
fair enough.
everyone.
Yeah, so I think, as
Probably,
always,
maybe.
we learnt a bit of stuff. We learnt stuff from the
Yeah,
Outlawry books. They were
we
good.
did.
Yeah.
We had a lot of laughs, but we learned a lot too.
We did, yeah.
Like,
So, and then I know we did one about, how to kind of get unstuck. That was just you and I chatting with some different ideas for people
right.
when they like the idea of maybe making a change, but they're not quite sure how to do it
Mm,
because their circumstances are such that it feels a bit unattainable in the moment. So we
right.
just talked about a few ideas for people
Mm.
from that
And
perspective. And I think that might have just about been the only one that you and I did without a guest, aside from the Outlawberries this season.
yes, because we had a listener email, hadn't we, saying, I love what you're talking about, but actually I just don't even know where to start. And I think I don't think we had a conclusion, did we really? But we just thought about some ways of building in a bit of time and space into the day where ideas can arise. Easier said than done. And I think we also talked about too, didn't we, that there's times in your life, there are seasons in your life, and there are some seasons when it is just
hard or impossible.
There is too much going on. There are young children around, or there are elderly parents, or are there whatever it is that you're juggling. And sometimes, just even getting a brief moment in the day. But then I guess also too, it does make me come back to Emily Chokos Patil, who took 15 minutes in the car waiting for her children to.
Yeah.
She wrote Martia, bit by bit, and a lot of it was done. Yeah, in sort of short 15, 20-minute bursts. So, I think that was, I think, what we came up with from that episode was that nothing is set in stone, but sometimes if there is a season in your life where there genuinely just isn't, or your circumstances are such that there just genuinely isn't that time, just know that this will pass. And
there's times ahead to try and find some ways to maybe do some stuff in the ways that you'd like to that you haven't yet had a chance to do. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, Kate, for a great season. It's been fun.
Thanks, Shayla. It has been fun. I've really enjoyed season 2. I think we've just we've spoken to some absolutely amazing people who are doing amazing things, interesting things. Whether, as I said, whether sort of on a global scale, like Michael, like Sam, or just in a small everyday scale. I like Sandrine and her game, and then I think we heard some really interesting people who gave us some really great ideas, like Beth Ann, Lois, Dr. Emily Amos too. I don't know, I always call her Dr. Emily Amos. She's also Emily. But she is.
True. Yeah.
I always feel like, well, if you've earned it, you should say. Everyone should say it as much as possible. So no, we had a really wide variety of people on the podcast, and I've enjoyed talking to everyone. It's just been such a joy, such fun.
Yeah.
And
it has.
That includes you, of course, Shayla. You matter. I learned that from mattering to say, Shayla, I appreciate you.
And I appreciate you, Kate.
Oh, stop it, you. And so season 3, we have got some great guests planned for season 3. We're going to take a few months off, as we did between season 1 and 2. Outlaws, if you're listening, please let us know if you have any ideas. We've had a few emails already with some fantastic ideas of people to talk to. We've got some great guests lined up, but any ideas you have, we'd love to hear them. Shayla, what's the email?
contact@outlawspodcast.com. You could message us via the Facebook page, via the LinkedIn page, or via the Instagram page. We'll get all of those. So, reach out if you've got any ideas. Tell us what you want. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. We're keen for all of the information. Tell us if you've got people who you think would make great guests.
We'd love to hear it. And thank you once again, everyone. It's just been such a pleasure, and it's just been so wonderful to hear everyone's comments and feedback, and the emails we've been getting. It's been wonderful, but more than anything, we just appreciate you listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
See you soon.
See you soon. See you in season 3.
Yeah. Bye.